I would like to recall that some of you may know or remember that just recently there was a European Space Summit taking place in Toulouse that was bringing together European leaders that have confirmed the ambitious plans of Europe to work closely together to accelerate Europe to become one of the space leaders in space. And in this regard, the European astronauts have formulated and released a so-called European Astronauts Manifesto on 16th of February at this European Space Summit in Toulouse. And this European Astronauts Manifesto actually focuses on and promotes the idea of an autonomous access, human access to space for Europe. And we are extremely honored and pleased to welcome here now to present this idea the Director General of the European Space Agency, Josef Aschbacher. And he's joined by Reinhold Ewald, the President of the Association of Space Explorers Europe, ASE. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian, and first of all, a very nice evening also from my side. Very happy to be here. As Christian was already saying, what we are doing, it's a very short introduction, and I will hand over the microphone very soon to Reinhold Ewald. But it is a very special, not announcement, but a very special manifesto which he is talking, which is the Astronauts Manifesto, which was prepared by the Association of the European Association of the Astronauts, which was prepared for the event of the Space Summit 2016. Maybe one word of what the Space Summit is, or what the Space Summit was. A year ago, when I became Director General of ESA, I was putting a document on the table called Agenda 2025, which basically says that we should in Europe lift space altogether in terms of its importance, use of space for society, but also its political recognition and political debate. And one proposal which was made is to organize a space summit involving heads of state, which is quite unusual for space meetings, at least in Europe. This space summit took place on the 16th of February, bringing together the ministers of EU and ESA member states, so 27 EU member states, 22 ESA member states, so 30 altogether because they are largely overlapping. And head of state was invited and involved, was actually inviting President Macron was hosting the meeting as France is having at the moment both the presidency of ESA and the presidency of the European Union, and therefore in two functions was hosting. And this was a very important moment. And one of the topics which we discussed was to lift also Europe, or to involve politicians in a discussion on the argumentation for human exploration. Human exploration, of course, meaning that human astronauts flying on possibly European rockets into space, because today, as you know, Europe is graciously participating on cooperations with NASA to bring our astronauts into space. Let me say one word on Reinhold Ewald, and he will then introduce the manifesto itself. Of course, he's well known, I guess, by many of you. He had a very, very impressive career. He joined DLR in 1997. He is a physicist by education, and joined the German National Astronaut Team in 1990. And in 1999, so 9 years later, became a part of ESA's European Astronaut Corps at European Astronaut Center in Cologne. He was a so-called research cosmonaut on the Soyuz TM-25 spacecraft and spent 18 days on Mir during the Mir 97 flight. Reinhold performed experiments on biomedical and material sciences and carried out operational tests to prepare for missions to the International Space Station. Besides his career as an operational or in operational space, he had numerous academic merits, for example, as professor for astronautics and space stations at the Institute of Spaceflight Systems at the University of Stuttgart. And I'm very glad to hand over the microphone now to Reinhold to introduce the Astronauts Manifesto. Reinhold.
Thank you, Josef. The introduction was on my part longer than the session, so let's make it short. If we can roll the movie, I want to convince you that I'm not alone on this podium. Actually, it's an initiative of the young and the middle and the veteran generation of European astronauts. If we can have the YouTube video.
Humans are explorers. Curiosity is in our nature.
Humankind is facing new challenges.
Europe needs new unifying dreams to keep its talents in Europe.
To create new economic opportunities and to propel itself back into the lead of technologically advanced nations.
As European astronauts, we know very well that space exploration is hard.
But we also know that Europe has what it takes, capabilities and ambition. All we need is the support of decision makers.
The time to set sails is now. We are ready.
Thank you. I hope that you are not disappointed that I'm not inviting you to marvelous cities just into my garden, but it was the message that counts. And we were very happy that we could grab this idea, which has been around for decades, actually. I mean, we are good in cooperating in Europe. We have excellent skills in understanding other technical cultures, and we have shown that in my time in the Mir Station or now with ISS, and it's still going on. You have seen Matthias Maurer in a very international crew there. And Josef brought forward new ideas for ESA, the accelerators, and I'm pretty sure you can fill a whole session on talking about it, but also about inspirators. And that is certainly something that where human spaceflight enters into the field. Christian pointed out it was in February that we issued this manifest, so the times have changed. We are all aware of that as of 24th of February. It was before that, but it was prophetic, because if you allow me to walk you in headlines through this manifesto, it says that the unifying power in times of increased polarization and political divide is something where spaceflight can help. Unifying power. Our Association of Space Explorers came together in 1985. It was Cold War. But people were forbidden to meet each other. People were forbidden to shake hands or to issue common ideas. And nevertheless, from the East and the West, people like Tom Stafford, people like Alexei Leonov came together and founded an organization that is still living today. And Dorin was there here. In order to help it make happen. So there is a unifying power in space-time, even in times, and that is the word of the manifest, of political unrest, economical struggles, and pandemic. We didn't know about actual hot war at that time, but we still think that we should not neglect the unifying power of spaceflight. Spaceflight has the ability to inspire, we heard that. It is a powerful motivator for young enthusiasts, and teaching at an engineering university, I can assure you that these people curiously join a session on, or a lecture series on astronautics. They don't know what to expect, but some of them return to the consoles, return to the teams that actually are then doing spaceflight. It's not only being an astronaut, becoming an astronaut that brings you into this field, but it's also the technical jobs around it that are very attractive. If we balance what Europe has, it's obvious that we are lagging a space transportation and a human spaceflight capability for years now. We have tried with Hermes, sounds a bell with many of you in the room here, and the answer we got, it's 60 billion of what was the pre-Euro accounting units to qualify an Ariane 5 for human spaceflight. So this idea was buried for many years with generations of administrators, of project experts would not grab it up. Now it's, I think, a different time. We have seen other ways to get to human spaceflight. See what is happening in the US. New competitors on the market. Soon probably there will be an Indian capability to launch people into space. Certainly we have seen the Chinese. So there's a changing time. But still, Europe's investment in exploration, in space exploration, is less than 10% of what NASA does. So we have kind of a lagging behind of our intentions, even though our technical standards would allow that. If we don't take a leading role in this human spaceflight endeavor, we will always be a junior partner. There is a great solidarity between the cosmonauts and astronauts, but truly they know to differentiate between being a spacecraft pilot, a commander, and being someone on a passenger seat taking up. You can do great things in space, but this is a slight, let's say, difference still in what we see when we join other nations' spacecraft and fly up to the station. Let me remind you that the ISS program and the European participation in the ISS program that later became Columbus was decided 30 years ago. End of the 80s. It was also a time where a lot of money was spent on political issues. Be reminded that Germany's reunification was about to come. But still, Europe kept its participation in the International Space Station, and now we are harvesting these fruits. And it can be that the decision to go along with a self-standing European capacity to launch humans into space will be the same fruitful event 30 years later. Maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe we are quicker than that. The next chapter will be Moon and Mars. We are on the critical path, we in Europe are on the critical path to the moon with the European Service Module. It's all there. If you ever are confronted with arguments, well, ESA is not what NASA does in the US, well, ESA has managed to get on the critical path, and with the ESM attached to the Orion spacecraft, we will see the first flight this year, and flights to come, exciting flights to come with European equipment in the past. Why not go one step further? If you want to be convinced financial-wise, well, we have to pay now. We have to pay for our fees for being a passenger, being on the passenger seat in the spacecraft that we are using right now. SpaceX and the Dragon, like Matthias Maurer, like Thomas Pesquet, like soon Samantha Cristoforetti. We can do barters, but still it's money that we are paying. So inaction in this respect can be more expensive on the long run than just stating that we want to invest in our own industry, in our own capabilities to do technical solutions to bring humans into space. Think of the information technology. Think of the discussion that we now have about being not self-standing in energy management in Europe. These are things that go back many years. The decision has been taken many years ago. We should be wiser than that when we talk about a human spaceflight vehicle. So the European taxpayer certainly wants to invest into projects that bring Europe and Europe's industry and technology more advanced than the competitors from abroad. So to summarize, a key piece in the well-stocked European space commitment is missing. And this is the human spaceflight capacity. And we were waiting for the right moment in time, and it turned out that Josef convened this high-standing summit in February to announce this message. It's a message of inspiration, it's a message for generations to come to see Europeans launch in their own human spaceflight vehicle, and it gives a sense of European identity. So, we are ready. Are you?
Thank you, Reinhold. I think this is so convincing coming from an astronaut, and it's always beautiful to hear the words of astronauts speaking with all this passion on going to space and having been there, and therefore your words are really counting very, very heavy on us. Maybe just one word on where does this lead? So we had the Space Summit. Of course, this was a very important moment, but we got the request, I got the request as DG of ESA to convene a group of high-level experts, advisors, not coming from the space domain, but from different levels of society, for example, economists, historians, artists, philosophers, to reflect about Europe's willingness to go to space with its own means, as Reinhold was explaining, having our own capability to have our own ship go up to space. So I was asked to convene this group. We are putting together a list of very prominent names. I'm not yet allowed to disclose them because we are still waiting for confirmations of these people. But we will start this work pretty soon. And then it will take a couple of months, several sessions, and of course we will keep the public informed as well, of course, as our decision makers. But then the result of this exercise, and this is really a very deep reflection of whether Europe should or should not invest in human exploration, and this is having several segments. Of course, one is the rocket itself, the spaceship, but also other elements of human exploration, either in the ISS framework or what will happen afterwards whenever the ISS ceases to exist. So that means in low Earth orbit, or eventually the moon and beyond. And this is a very deep reflection, because today the expenditures, as you said, Reinhold, in Europe, as compared to NASA, is 8% of the budget on exploration, and that already gives the difference between the investments and, of course, also the capabilities of both nations. So I'm asked to convene this group. This group will bring recommendations back to me as DG and our member states of ESA, and then we will prepare decisions for politicians at another space summit, which I was asked to organize at the end of 2023. We aim for November 2023, and then ask decision makers, politicians, how they want to progress on this topic. And the answer can be do nothing, or do more, or do a little more or a little less. This really is up to decision makers to do, because this is not a technical question. Technically, we will be able to do it. We will have many building blocks in place. It's a political decision whether we want to engage in this, because I don't need to explain there's so much connected to it, from strategic elements, technology development, and many more, which will be connected. And therefore, politicians need to make this decision at a future space summit at the end of 2023. So thank you from my side. I hand back, I guess, to Christian. Sorry, Reinhold.
Before I give it to Christian to open the floor for questions, we cannot praise ourselves for this idea. That would be very unpolite. But let me cite the words of Rusty Schweikart. Rusty Schweikart, one of the Apollo astronauts, Apollo 9, and the founder also in the founding group of our association. And he says, "I'm blown away by this idea. I just cannot express how proud I am that you guys, girls, for the fantastic manifesto you have created and presented to the European political and space leaders now meeting at the European Space Summit. It's a powerful and thoughtful document, calling attention to both the opportunity and responsibility that European leaders now confront." That's a voice from outside.
You know,
Let's not disappoint him.
You know, we, the International Astronautical Federation, we always claim that we are one of the leading space advocacy organizations. For this one, I mean, convincing the people in here that this might have very excellent benefits is maybe not so much necessary. What is necessary, as Josef said, is to convince the decision makers and the politicians who give the money at the end. If we can be at service to you in this one, please make use of whatever opportunity you see at the next IC here in Paris. Maybe the first initial results of this group may be already ready to be presented. We would be very happy about that. Please, questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I see already an arm going up there and another one here. So let's take the one.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. Mr. Aschbacher, I'm not sure if it was your initiative, but there have been the European Space Talks or Days where you really try to interact with as many people from the public to see what they think about space. My question is, I will even make it a very guided question. How important is the topic of climate, and wouldn't there be a climate manifesto need? Could you maybe comment on that? Thank you.
No, thank you. I really like this question. For those of you who know me, know that I have a past in climate research and using space for climate. In fact, what we did propose for this Space Summit, there have been 3 what we call accelerators and 2 inspirators. And one of the inspirators is exactly the one just introduced by Reinhold. There's another one on the IC Moon. But we also have 3 accelerators, and 2 out of the 3 accelerators are dealing with climate. One is called Space for Green Future, and the other one is called Rapid and Resilient Crisis Response, but crisis in many cases meaning not only the crisis we see right now in terms of geopolitics, but more what is the impact of climate on our weather, on our climate system, for example, floods, fires, storms, this type of crisis. But of course, since the 24th of February, this has another meaning as well where it can be helpful. So yes, 2 out of these 3 accelerators are focusing on climate, and this is exactly the message of a high-level group which I composed last year, who have been giving this advice, and this is something that our member states have endorsed also at the Space Summit at the top level, that this is initiatives that Europe needs, and we should engage in this direction. So thank you for this question. This is very much on our agenda.
Thank you. There is another question here. Yeah. Christian.
Thank you. Well, Reinhold knows it very well, but maybe for you, Josef, we met first in Earth observation, so you only know me as Earth observation guy, but maybe I need to say that before that, I worked for more than 25 years in human spaceflight, starting with Spacelab, Columbus development, ATV, and the follow-on project. So just to put that in perspective, what I'm just saying. I've seen a lot of initiatives being born from ARD on Ariane 5, Hermes, of course, CTV, and even in past years, we had some initiatives together with our Russian partners, together with American, US partners, etc., and they all failed. If I look back to this history, and I've been part of many of these stories, my feeling is that we have tried to implement too much on a too long scale. There were people who feared a lot and who put too many fears in these concepts. I'm convinced, looking back to this history, that today we need a basic capability. So to say, even if it's boring, 2 people in a capsule on an Ariane 62 would already give a very clear sign that we have the basic capability to be a respected and an interesting partner. So just what I want to pass on from my experience is not to aim for the perfect thing in 10 years, which costs 10 billion euro, but to go for an early demonstration in order to get the society going, in order to get young engineers on board, in order to motivate partners to collaborate with us, and not just us asking for bits and pieces here and there. So that would be my first message, to go for that at the ministerial conference in October, not to aim too high, too ambitious, to the moon, to Mars, to anywhere, but really to the basic capabilities and basic stepping stone. And the second thing is really to commit the industry to a very clear target, as I said, to a very simple concept, and to come up with that in a very short time frame, and not to allow us, all of us Europeans, whether that's agency or industry anywhere else, to go for 5 or 10 years concept. We need something now, And I only remind of the mid-80s, you mentioned the mid-80s, where we had a double-track decision in Europe, where we said, we want to have the one, and we reach out with this capability that we want to develop, reach out to, let's say, our counterpart in order to show that we are willing to collaborate, and this may become a very important element in the next 1 or 2 years in order to rebuild bridges that may have been destroyed. And maybe we in space can be the first ones to rebuild the bridges that we see crumbling at the moment. Thank you.
No, thank you. I can only agree with you that we need to really be a bit careful on what these options are. But as I said, there will be recommendations coming from a group that are not space people, that are really people from representing different levels of society, and they will assess it from economic, geopolitical, political perspectives, and then we do the engineering part and say, yes, this option costs so much, this option takes so long, and so on. So yes, I think this exercise will have to be done. I do agree with you that we probably need to be modest in the approach, just to be realistic. I have to unfortunately mention that Ariane 62 doesn't fly humans, is not human rated, as you also know. But of course we need to look into various options of what this means and what the options are. So yes, the options will really go from do nothing to all the way to a very, I would say, luxurious version of all the elements of human spaceflight. But there will be many shades in between, which will also be assessed and proposed. And then, as I said, politicians have to make decisions.
Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the end of this session and of our GNF session in general. I would like to ask you to give another round of applause of our two excellent speakers here. It is my pleasure to hand them over also our 70 years anniversary pins. Thanks a lot, Josef and Reinhold. And now it's time for fun. Our traditional IAF cocktail is served upstairs. Please use the time to network, to mingle around, to talk to your friends and colleagues, and enjoy. Thank you very much for being with us here today.